soon as thanks so much for joining us, Joël, on growth hacking, data-driven scaling. Love the topic, as we just did that with Sales Playbook together with you, so can only recommend. And yeah, without further ado, intro basically done. Led and built the growth team at Beekeeper now, founded your own company, Real Growth Hacking, to make sales and growth more data-driven for especially B2B startups. Over to you.
Cool. Thank you very much for the introduction, Manuel. Super happy to be here. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, what the heck? Growth hacking, data-driven scaling. What does that actually mean? I think this is what we're going to deep dive a little bit into today. How do I scale a company in a data-driven approach? This is what I'm going to talk about today in detail. Manuel already gave me a lovely introduction. So I'm not going to repeat this here, but basically my background started in entrepreneurship, worked in VC, and then joined Beekeeper as we were very, very small, 30 employees, and then was happy and lucky enough to basically company to company, to up to 200 people leading the growth team there, building the growth team, product-led, and trying all sorts of tactics, growth tactics in marketing and sales and product over the time. And now I founded Real Growth Hacking back in 2021, where we basically help companies doing the same. And the big question today I want to take a look at is, how did actually all those Silicon Valley success stories scale their businesses? So we have a bunch of B2B, B2C companies here, software, mainly software in that case, but it also works for other companies. If it's B2C, B2B, software, non-software, it does not matter. What I'm going to show you today works for all kind of businesses. And one thing I think those companies, like those crazy success stories, they do really, really, really well is that they were completely aware of the different growth stages. And they were very aware in what kind of growth stage they actually are. There are mainly three stages which you differentiate it, which is a product market fit, scaling and traction, and then expanding and innovation. And here it's very important to understand that depending on the stage you are in as a company, there are different goals to achieve and different frameworks and approaches you're using. Okay, and today we're mainly going to talk about the scaling and traction phase, but I very, very quickly want to talk about the product market fit stage as well, because being data driven starts already in the product market fit stage. And here, I'd like to ask you a question. How many of today's companies which were very successful are still the founder's vision from the early days? So let's take a look at it. YouTube was initially a dating site, okay? Twitter, some podcast network no one knows today. Instagram was called Bourbon. No fucking clue what they were doing. Nintendo was creating manufacturing playing cards. Slack was a gaming company, and Beekeeper, my previous company, which is B2B internal communications, was also a dating platform initially. So you see, it's quite a journey from where they started to where they actually went. And that means growth in this early stage is really all about figuring out product market fit. It's not about focusing on acquisition, because if you do that too early, it creates more damage than benefit, right? It's trying to fill a water bottle that basically has holes inside. So what do companies need to do in that stage? Well, they must stay flexible, open-minded, and they need to create and test their hypothesis, okay, and measure what sticks with the users and what not, okay? So already there, building a solid data foundation on which you can track your channels, but also tracking your product, the behavior is very important. Furthermore, you need to be able to track product market fit. There are qualitative and quantitative frameworks to do that. So it already starts in this very, very early stage that is important that you get into data and that you do it the correct way. But today, as mentioned, this is not what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the scaling and the traction part. What does it mean? It means I'm a post-product market fit company. I have a certain degree of product market fit, meaning I have traction, I have customers that are using my product or service, and they stay with me, okay? They're not leaving. I have traction and it works. This is the stage when you have those signs, you really want to start scaling your business. And I do that in two different ways. Either I scale and maximize the existing channels, or I identify and build up new channels. Very pretty simple expressed in that way, right? And I love this quote from Benjamin Franklin, who said, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. And it's exactly the same with your own business, right? Because you say, okay, I want to scale, but if you want to scale and you don't even know how your business works and how your channel works and your user journey, how the heck are you supposed to scale, right? You have limited resources as a startup. You need to make sure that you invest them into the right growth levers. And to do so, there is a framework which you can use. And this framework is called the Pirate metrics. Okay, on the right hand side here you see 5 different stages: acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, and referral. If you take the first letters from each, R, now you know why it's called the Pirate metrics. So there's a very cool framework introduced by Dave McClure back in the days. And basically what you do here is you take the entire user journey a prospect has from the very first touch point to the end, and you put that in one funnel. So you don't have only a limited view like in a marketing funnel or like in a sales funnel, or in product often doesn't even have a funnel at all. You put it all into one package because you want to understand the journey end to end. Okay, so in the first step, acquisition, we ask ourselves, how do customers find you? How do they come to us? From what kind of channels? How do we actually attract them? Second step, activation. So this is something that, for example, Mehdi was mentioning before, okay? How quickly can you get customers to the aha moment? How quickly can they realize meaningful value with your product or service? This can either be in the product through free trial or freemium, or it can be during a sales demo. That's the activation phase, right? And then retention, how many customers are you retaining and why do you lose some, right? Going into the revenue, how do you make money out of them? And then going into the last stage, which is a very important stage that most businesses completely forget, referral. How do you turn your customers into advocates? Okay, so in short, that is the full funnel. And when you start slicing and dicing that funnel, then you have a lot of different important KPIs in that funnel, which you want to be aware of, which we're going to dive into. Be aware that this Pirate metric funnel is coming in 2 different versions, right? So depending on your business, if you're product-led, retention, let's say if you have a freemium version, comes before revenue, and if you're more in a sales-led motion, then revenue gets before retention. Okay, so just these slight differentiation in that model, but it works for all kind of businesses. Now, I'm about to show you how such a Pirate funnel actually looks in real, okay? But that you are capable of understanding it, just here's some simplification. What you're gonna see is on the X-axis, the acquisition channels. So what are all the different channels I have from inbound to outbound and the different sub-channels? On the Y-axis, we're gonna have the user journey. So the different life cycle stages in B2B, any kind of important KPIs. In B2C, it would be just, visit website, chat order, checkout, whatever. And the data we're going to see, we pull top of funnel from Google Analytics, mid of funnel from your CRM, some part of your product, and then referral eventually again from your CRM. Okay. Now, such a Pirate funnel model in real life looks the following. Boom. So here you have some data. It's about data-driven scaling, so I hope you're not overwhelmed. So what do we see here? Okay, looks complicated. It's easy to understand though. Again, Y-axis, the different acquisition channels I have divided into the main lead sources, inbound, outbound, and other. Then the sub-lead sources for inbound, which you, for example, are provided by Google Analytics, and then your custom lead sources for your outbound or other channels. The left-hand side, we now see here the stages and then the KPIs that matter truly to your business. Okay, in B2B, you definitely have all the life cycle stages here and the conversion rates from each to the other, as well as some other important KPIs as revenue, ARR, average deal size, customer acquisition cost, lifetime value, retention metrics, and so on. Okay. So that's a very important part. And when you have this data model about your business in front of you, then you really see black on white what's going on in your business. And we're going to get back to that, but I quickly want to highlight the following. And this is one very big misconception I see over and over again in the business. A lot of companies, especially B2B sales-led companies, they think scaling is all about focusing on the acquisition stage. It's all about creating more traction and putting more into the funnel. But once you have such a pirate model in front of you, you realize that this is absolutely not true, right? Sometimes an only 5% increase in your activation stage can have a way bigger impact than increasing your top of funnel acquisition by 20%. Okay, let's take a look at some of the examples of like fastly growing companies. PayPal, Dropbox, they became big because of their referral systems. Last stage, not acquisition. Trello, Slack, they become big because of their activation and retention stage, right? Product-led companies using your product to drive acquisition. Airbnb, they also become big because of their activation stage, reverse engineering of Craigslist and all that of sort of things. So actually, many of the high growth companies, they become big because they apply the right tactics in those mid of funnel or bottom of funnel stages, and not just by putting more acquisition into the top of the funnel. Cool. So we have this data model in front of us, right? You now see black and white what's going on in your company. Now, there are 4 things you need to be fully aware of and which you need to ask yourself about your business. And this is, you want to know what's the highest volume channel. You want to know what's the lowest cost channel. You want to know what's the best performing channel. And you want to find all the major conversion leaks you have in your business. Okay, so you remember those 4. You're going to go back to the data set. So I give you actually a minute right now. I'm just going to be quiet. I want to have you look at the data. Try to identify what's the highest volume channel, what's the lowest cost channel, what's the best converting channel, and where do we have major conversion leaks. Okay, think about it for a minute, and then we're going to have a look at it together and also try to interpret what that means. In the meantime, I drop some links into the chat. There you go.
So any questions that you have, put them to the chat at any time. I mean, use the opportunity, right? When you have these amazing speakers live. So there's still nearly 100 people on the line. So, I mean, it's free value you get. Otherwise, I'd ask a few questions.
Cool. We get into that right away. But I would say with that, I continue. Okay, so how do we read this data, right? How do we get smart out of it? Now it gets a little bit tricky. So listen up. Good. First of all, highest volume channel, okay? Looking at this top of funnel traction and even with customers, the direct channel, direct inbound is my highest volume channel, okay? So this is the channel that brings me most of my clients and most of top of funnel traction. Now, what do I do with this information? Well, first of all, I get an understanding for any single improvement I do in any of those conversion rates here is going to create the biggest leverage on the revenue I actually create, okay? Very, very important. So if you take any resources in your company and you put them on improving any of those conversion rates, it's going to have the biggest leverage, okay? Let's go a little bit further. What does it mean that the direct traffic is so big? Well, it means that either this company has a substantially big brand awareness in the market. This is why people are looking directly for this company. Or it might be a product-led company that has some nice product viral triggers that when a user starts using the product, he or she will attract other users to the platform, which come in as direct traffic, okay? Second thing, What's the lowest cost channel? That one is pretty easy. Here we have the customer acquisition cost. We see referring websites has the lowest cost. So what do I do with this information? Well, it means when I focus on this channel, then I have very, very profitable customers coming in, okay? So that means if I want to go more into profitability, I'm going to move more resources into this direction. And it also means that I actually can invest more into this channel as the customer acquisition cost is lower in average compared to the other channels, okay? Now, third thing, what's the best performing channel? And this is what we have here. Cold outreach has a 31% lead to customer conversion rate. What does it mean? Well, it means that any increase in absolute volume in this channel is going to bring me the biggest amount of new customers, okay? So this is a channel which is kind of like a big untapped opportunity as the volume here is still very low, but I have massively amazing conversion rate. Cool. Now, fourth thing, conversion leaks. What are things that do not work in my company? Okay, here, point 4, social marketing qualified lead to product qualified lead conversion. 27% sucks quite a bit compared to the other conversion rates of the other channels. Okay, what does it mean? Well, it seems like from social, I am able to attract actually prospects which become marketing qualified. They might start using my freemium or free trial version, but they're not becoming product qualified, meaning they're not able to find meaningful value in my product. What does that mean? Well, it might mean that my targeting of my social channel or my social ads is actually wrong. I'm attracting the wrong people, okay? Now, let's go further here. Another issue, 55% PQL to sales qualified lead conversion rate of the paid channel. So that means, okay, people are actually getting in, they get into my product, they realize meaningful value, but it seems as they're not sales qualified. So they either do not fit into our ideal customer profile, or they're from like wrong countries we don't want to go after. This is why this number is so bad, okay? Now I can go on through the other things, but this is basically how you learn what is working in your company and what is not working. Now, the next step is, of course, that you start creating impact by impacting those metrics, right? But now you know very, very clearly what works in your company and what not, and you can take the limited resources you have and make sure you invest those in exactly those things we have in front of us. So an easy exercise to do that is, first of all, I formulate those like issues and findings I had here into opportunities, meaning little cards of what should I do. In our case, it would be improve the SQL to opportunity conversion rate. So this is this part, right? Because if I improve this conversion rate throughout my funnel, I have an impact on all kind of channels. Fix website conversion rate loss. Referring website. So this is this one, right? If I improve this conversion rate, lowest cost channel, this will create also quite an impact, which is nice. And then scale up cold outbound channel. So this is this channel we saw here, best lead to customer conversion rate, but very little volume. So that's a big opportunity we can leverage. Of course, there is way more to that model to learn, but just for the exercise, I put those 3 different opportunities we have to scale a company. Now, what you can do is use a simple impact effort matrix, okay? So what are the quick wins here? What are the big bets? What are the time sinks? And what are the maybes? And I just quickly mapped those 3 different opportunities I have here on this map, okay? And generally speaking, once we do this, we can derive a priority how we want to go about that, okay? Usually we work our way from left to right, meaning the first resources from the company I'm going to take and I'm going to focus on scaling up cold outbound because I get the biggest bang for the buck, okay? Then as a second priority, I'm going to fix the referring website conversion rate loss. And then very big bet is to improve SQL to opportunity conversion. So it's a lot of effort, but it will also have a very big impact for my company, okay? And then from here, you actually start working on those things. And this is pretty much the step you need to take if you want to scale in that moment. If you're scale up and you really want to go big, you need to create that data foundation so you actually exactly learn this, what I just showed you before. Now, is this everything? No, of course not, right? There are a bunch more steps you need to take. First of all, I was talking about this step here. Build a data foundation and identify what truly matters to your business, okay? That's a big step you need to take. But prior to this, you should also have a cross-functional team that really truly knows what data-driven scaling means and which is also trained in the art of growth hacking. After you have the data together, you want to define the right strategy on how to go about it. And you also want to align it with your objectives and key result framework. If you're using this, it's basically a management framework to translate strategy into an operational plan to make sure that all the teams work on the right KPIs that are really important to your business. And then once you have that in place, then the actual truly growth hacking part starts, which I have not talked about yet, which is basically the methodology to run experiments and scale and impact those KPIs, which we just discussed prior in the Pirate funnel model. So that are the different steps. And with that, I would finish. So how to continue from here? Let's say, hey, I'm very interested in data-driven scaling. Feel free, go to our website, check it out. We help out businesses and individuals. Join our community. We're having the biggest growth community in Switzerland with over 280 growth experts that like exchange daily. You get a lot of value there. And now I'm all yours for the rest of the time to ask any questions you have.
Amazing. Thanks so much for sharing all this value for free. I think it's like keynote. I stopped counting, probably number 10 out of 14. Really, really cool stuff, all with your community. That's one of the 3 Slack channels I am in, actually, I think. So any questions from the audience? Otherwise, I'll just pick the one from the Q&A. Any tips on how to apply this to B2B2C, so business to business to consumer? What do you do if you have multiple stakeholders in the process?
Yeah, so they are businesses that even have like different pipelines, right? Maybe I sell B2B and then even B2C. You can build different pirate funnels. You can have like several pirate funnels if you have different business models in your company, right? To reflect this, or you extend the pirate funnel with like certain stages that apply to your business. So usually when we build a pirate funnel, this is always very customized to the business. So you start with the principles that I showed you before, but then of course you customize it to the business model. But like this stage, I first would need to understand what your business exactly is so that I can tell you how your pirate funnel should then look like.
Cool. Makes a lot of sense. And then what about referrals? You mentioned like 79% from Thomas, like I think he's referring to like the pirate funnel, like Google Sheet or Excel. And also Fabian Jäger goes into saying like, what kind of business is the example representing, if you can share a bit of data on that?
Sorry, what was that? What is the exact question?
The table you shared, right?
Yeah.
So Thomas is asking, what about referral? Like, does the 79% coming from? And then also from Fabian Jäger, what business is this representing?
Okay, so what kind of business is this representing? This is example data, but it represents a product-led company which has a freemium approach. Okay, so B2B product-led company with a freemium approach. And with the referrals, he was asking about a specific number, which I don't exactly know which one he means.
Yeah, he's writing a Q&A item on this. When you calculated the best performing channel, referral had a 79% lead to customer conversion ratio. How come it wasn't chosen as the best performing channel?
I see. Yeah, so that's absolutely true, right? In that case, if we only look at lead to customer conversion, it would be the best performing channel. So you could also list that there. It is completely valid. However, referral is not just a channel, it is also a stage, right? It is a stage of the pirate funnel, and it is basically only leveraged through the other acquisition channels. So if I really want to scale, of course, referral is important, but I cannot scale it by itself, right? Because, I mean, let's say I have certain referral mechanisms already in place in this company, then I cannot further scale it. I need to scale the business through the existing channels. But the referral channel will give me an extra with any more customers I win through the other channels.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And then from Joseph, like the metrics you shared earlier are interesting. What software generated those?
Okay, so usually those metrics we have here, we pull them. I have a slide. Oh, so there we go. So top of funnel metrics, Google Analytics, then CRM product and CRM again. So let's have a look here. I mean, unique visitor bounce rates, traffic to lead conversion, you get that out of Google Analytics, okay? Starting from leads all the way to customers, you get that from your CRM, right? Either HubSpot or whatever else you are using. One big mistake people do is that they have a CRM, but they don't set up custom lead source tracking system, meaning any kind of lead that goes into your CRM, you exactly need to know from what source they are coming from, right? Tools like HubSpot do that automatically for your inbound channels, but you still need to build a custom tracking system to reflect all the other channels. Other tools like Soho or stuff I've seen, they don't do that by nature, so you have to build it. And then if you go further down, I mean, this here is some financial data calculations, retention you get from the product, and referrals eventually again from the CRM.
Cool. That makes a ton of sense. And then we have one more question. We can take about like this one and then one more, I think, from Claudia Geigen. It seems like the data model is already with big inbound and outbound numbers after product market fit to calculate customer acquisition costs and LTV lifetime value. How does it apply in the very beginning before product market fit in B2B, when still numbers are not as big and validation is a priority? And especially if you sell like large 5-6 figure deals, like these numbers might sometimes be just like 2, 7, 4. So percentage ratios are skewed, right?
Yeah, so that's absolutely true, right? So this is why I said this model, this kicks in once you start scaling, right? This is when you're really truly in the scaling phase. In the very beginning, you will not get a lot of value out of this model, especially let's say if you're in B2B enterprise, because your numbers are just too little, right? You still want and need to build the right tracking because it already starts there that you track those things, but the true value you get out of this once you have some first traction, once you have several channels and you want to know, how do I get to the next level? But there are other things you, of course, do when you're like pre-product market fit or in this phase, which we've not talked about today, but there are a lot of stuff you can do as well.
Cool. Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. And then one last question actually from Anas Alshanti. What tool do you suggest for custom tracking, so tracking the funnel from different platforms? There's really like expensive ones like the Funnel.io and so on, like HubSpot Marketing Professional. Like, what do you recommend here? Like segment one.
So I have I get this question a lot and I have a very clear recommendation. And my recommendation is use Google Sheets in the beginning, okay? Why? Well, because any kind of data aggregation tool you use very often, it has its own limitations. And building what I showed you here before is actually very, very simple, right? You just then take the data from Google Analytics, from your CRM and your product, and you do that once a quarter in the beginning. And then you do it once a month, it becomes more relevant depending on how much data you have. If you're a big company, 200 employees plus, like Beekeeper, then it definitely makes sense to aggregate it in a data tool. I personally use Looker. It's like a massive data aggregation tool and data visualization tool where then you really can automatically pull all data from all kind of tools together, but then you need an engineer to basically set this up and program it correctly. Until that point, if you run this once a quarter, once a month, very easy to quickly pull that together like that.
Yeah. Cool. With that, I think we finished right on time, right on point. Thanks so much, Joël, for sharing all these amazing